All right, obviously everyone's engine bay is going to be a little bit different, going from car to car, model to model, whatever it is, modifications to modifications. The starting gist of it is going to be pretty much the same across all boards. You know, you've got to take your intake off. You got to take this back shield off the cover here. You know, trim pieces. The meat and potatoes is where it's really at, though. So those are the things that we're going to cover. Hopefully, you know, you can get to put together to the point where I'm going to be picking up pretty easily if you're going to be attempting pulling out your engine for the first time. Now I will say this time we did remove the front bumper, radiator, and everything because we don't have a lift or hoist or anything, so we're actually just going to roll it out of the front of the car. If you have a hoist or if you have a lift or anything like that, or not a hoist, but if you have a lift or a jack table, you're not going to have to remove anything front bumper wise. You can just drop the entire thing out of the bottom. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing different on this one. You can kind of pick however you do it. This is the third time that I'm pulling this particular engine. It's going to be the fourth time I'm pulling an Audi 3.0 engine altogether. So I think I've become pretty efficient at it. This is the first time I'm actually recording it. So I'm going to kind of break it down as to how I feel is the best way to do it. And you can kind of do it however you want. At the end of the video, I'm going to do a slow scroll through all the steps through the manual so you can get that information and again, do it however you see fit for your kind of scenario here. But the way that I like to do it, I like to break it up between the top of the engine, the front of the engine, and the bottom. And then on each one of those sections, you're going to have 3 different categories that I like to look at. So you're going to have your electrical, you're going to have your mechanical, and you're going to have your coolant. So all of your coolant lines and everything. So with that, we'll go ahead and get into it. But first things first, no matter what, on any car, no matter what you have going on, you want to make sure that you disconnect the battery so that you don't have anything priming, you don't cause any kind of electrical issues in your car. So number one, disconnect your battery from everything. All right, so once you have your battery disconnected, you can go ahead and jump to the electrical. First thing I do is take care of the ECU over here, which is just a matter of removing the windshield washer fluid reservoir, and then you have the ECU on top of that. And then off the back of the ECU, you're going to have these 2 clips here, these connectors. You want to disconnect that and place your ECU in a safe space where it's not going to fall or collect any kind of static. Once that's done, there's going to be 1 cover on top of your fuse box, which houses all of this. Off the bottom of this, you're going to want to disconnect. You have a connector here and a connector here, which goes down into the actual frame of the vehicle. So you're going to disconnect those, and then this whole unit will come out of that corner. You can lay it on top. Once you have that done, this part of your wiring harness goes across the back here. So you're going to want to disconnect this ground wire here. And that's not a ground wire. You're going to disconnect this wire here from inside this housing. And you're also going to have this cord which clips onto the other side. So once you have that clip undone, you're going to come back over here and you're going to disconnect the looks like there's 3 wires on the left side of this box. You're going to disconnect those, and that'll release this entire wiring harness here, which again you'll disconnect from here. This wiring harness runs to the bottom side of your engine, and then you'll be disconnecting this harness coming down through here. You're going to take it off the body, just a few connectors and bolts, and then down here that actually connects to one of your ground that one runs to, the one on the other side runs to the top part of your engine and the back side. So once you have that done, you'll disconnect your fuel line from over here. Comes up and around here over to your high pressure fuel pump down there. Right next to your hard line that goes to your actual fuel rail is your soft line. You want to disconnect that from your high pressure fuel pump. And then continuing with disconnecting lines, refrigerant line, and then off the back side here, you're going to disconnect 2 lines. You're going to have this line here, which all it does is it goes to this line right here, connects to this, and then you're going to have your other line, your other hose here that runs through your false firewall into your actual firewall for your heater. So that'll get disconnected also. And then you'll disconnect. Then you'll disconnect this piece, which runs over to where your fuel line is, and connect right on the top of this. So that'll come undone. But again, everything kind of just be folded and tossed off to the side. When it comes to your coolant, you have, of course, your 2 coolant lines on your reservoir here. You're going to want to disconnect your coolant from your supercharger. Whether your supercharger is divorced or not, it's going to depend on how you do that. But mine is divorced, so I just have these 2 lines off the top, and then that's separated and disconnected. You also have your upper radiator hose and your lower radiator hoses that need to be disconnected. Of course, that's where you got to drain everything. So step 1, obviously drain everything. So for the front of the engine, along with the upper and lower radiator hoses, you're also going to have the hose that goes to your crossover pipe on the front of the engine, and then you're also going to have your refrigerant line that goes from your compressor to your radiator. Also on the front, you're going to have these two connectors for both of your fans.
You're going to have your front connection on your oil cooler right over here that you're going to disconnect, because that comes out and goes to a hard line that's attached to your frame. You're also going to want to disconnect your coolant pump harness right here.
Before you get moving on any of these suspension items, when you take the subframe out and it goes back in, it's not always going to be exactly the same spot, but to get a good reference, it's good to take a measurement from the center of your wheel and then pick a spot on the body and put a mark there. I like to use painter's tape and measure the distance between the two so that as you're putting the subframe back in, you know that it's going pretty close to the right spot. But even with that, it's really good to go ahead and get in alignment when you're all set.
All right, and then looking at your suspension lines, or your suspension system and all of this, you're going to disconnect your upper control arms. I have the adjustable control arms, so I was able to just kind of pop the Allen key screw off the top and disconnect them. If you don't have that, your best bet is going all the way to the back here and removing this, your bolts over on this side and over on that side, and that'll disconnect your steering knuckle from your control arms. Once you have that done, you go ahead and remove your brake calipers. Once this is off, I like to zip tie it to my springs here because that's all going to be staying in. Once you get that done, you're going to come down here and you're going to remove the bolt down here. Let's see if I can get that to focus. There we go. You're going to go to the bottom of your strut and you're going to remove the bolt off here, removing it from your lower control arm. You're going to want to remove your wheel speed sensor, which is going to be over here on that side. Your wheel speed sensor, which is going to be right here. And then you're also going to remove your sway bar end link from here, because again, that's all coming out. So when you drop the subframe, your strut will remain in place with your brake caliper attached to it, and everything else will be coming out.
So starting on the bottom side, we're going to go ahead and remove the transmission oil cooler. There's just 3 bolts that hold it on. Once you have that off, you can disconnect the coolant hose that is going into the right side of the picture here. The reason why you're moving this is to give you access to the flywheel and the flywheel cover, because you're going to have to remove all the flywheel bolts. I like to do that before the engine is out, especially in this scenario, because it's just going to be sitting on a table. I don't have a hoist. Otherwise, it's going to be almost impossible to get to.
Alright, so for this part, you have a few different options. Like I said, you do have to turn the engine so you can get all the flywheel bolts, which is a pretty simple object, but it slides right in here, catches on each one of the bolts to distribute the weight a little bit more evenly to get the engine to turn over. So what we're looking at here is on the bottom side, you're going to have to turn the engine over behind your transmission oil cooler. You're going to have this hole here. It's going to be covered with a plastic piece, which I've taken off already. But this bolt right up here, you're going to have 6 or 8. I can't remember exactly. But you're going to have to get all those off, and that connects the flywheel to the engine. Of course, you only have this little space, so that's why you have to have the ability to actually turn the engine over to line these up with the hole each time that you do that. So we're going to knock that out. All right, so from the underside, you're going to have your wiring harness that comes from the battery in the back to the front. You're going to have one clip here that's on the driver's side, and then you're going to have your ground to disconnect from your frame from this spot right here. Your transmission fluid sensor underneath. You're going to undo this because that's going to be staying attached to the vehicle. You're going to be disconnecting your headlight level sensor, which is right there. All right, so your steering rack is pretty easy. It's really just a matter of removing this little pinch bolt here, and it'll slide right off of your steering rack. Very simple. You're going to have 4 subframe bolts on each side. Down here, you're going to have 1, 2 right there. You got those 2 there. And then up towards the front, you got one that, let's see. And then up towards up front, you're going to have 2 more. You have this one here. And the other one is, I've removed it already, but it's right here. So you're going to have those 4 on each side, and then you'll have the transmission mount bolts, and that's all.
So 2 quick things that I didn't mention in our video. When you get to this point before you lower it, you do want to make sure that you disconnect your exhaust from any point. I think closer to the engine the better. And then you're going to want to make sure that you disconnect whatever you have coupling your drive shaft to your transmission. It could be, I've seen a zip tie, I've seen a hose clamp. But as you pull the engine away from everything else, it'll slide off automatically.
There's your 4 from this side. Got the 4 transmission mount bolts. I'm gonna pull it on out.
So I did lower the car down enough to where the engine was just sitting about a ½ inch or so above the engine cart that I'm going to use to pull the engine, so that as I remove those subframe bolts, the engine would then slowly land onto that cart. Now if you're using a lift or a table, you don't want to lower the engine completely away. You only want to go about 4 or 5 inches, which will allow you enough space to disconnect your transmission gear selector cable. But with that, you should be completely separated from the rest of your car.
Alright, so these are your mount bolts. You have your 4 transmission mount bolts, and you're going to have 8 of your subframe bolts. Everything is disconnected at this point, so we're going to go ahead, it's resting on the cart here, so we're going to go ahead and just start slowly raising up each side, paying real close attention to all the wires.
Now, as you're pulling everything out or dropping it out of the bottom, I can't emphasize enough to just take your time, go over everything. I'm no Audi mechanic. Every single time I've done this, there's been at least one wire or hose that I've forgotten. So just take your time, don't mess anything up, don't cause any extra work for yourself. And just like that, the engine is out. I did it in my driveway. I did have help actually pulling the engine out of the engine bay. I also had some help when it came to hand turning the engine over to get to the flywheel bolts. But in conclusion, that's it. I was able to get it done in my driveway with a small bag of tools, a makeshift rolling cart, and an extra set of hands now and then. Again, throughout this entire process, this is the way that I've done it. I've done it 3 other ways. I've done it to where I'm pulling the engine out of the top. I've dropped everything out of the bottom. By far, dropping the engine and the transmission on the subframe is the easiest way to go about doing this. I am going to go ahead and link 2 videos in the description, 2 videos that I used when I was doing it for the very first time, which I found was very helpful. There is a handful of different ways to approach this, and like I said, everyone's car is going to be a little bit different based off of what modifications you may have, or what platform you're doing it out of, but it's pretty much all the same. So I hope that between this video, the videos and the links, the scroll through the manual, which I'm doing right now, you're able to piece together all the information that you need to get it done yourself. There's a few different ways to attack it. This is what I found to be the best. So hopefully that helped you out. Moving forward, I'm going to be putting out the videos for the actual engine building process. This is the first engine I've ever built, so I learned as I was doing it. So hopefully I can share that information with you. If you have any questions or concerns on anything that I've gone over on this video, you can comment. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. I know it's not the most organized video or the best put together video, but I think it gathered all the information that you need.